I would like to acknowledge that this podcast is being recorded on the traditional lands of the Boon Wurrung and Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which Glen Ira is located. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge and uphold their continuing relationship to this land.
Welcome back to the Swinburne Professional Staff Network podcast, the podcast professionals with Kristy Ash, made by professional staff for professional staff. I am Ash Carden, and today we have our re-engagement from parental leave special episode. This episode came about from your requests on Yammer. So thank you everyone for engaging, and welcome back, Kristy. Good to have you back at the mic.
Oh, g'day, Ash. Oh, thanks for that beautiful intro. I really appreciate that, and it's great to see you as always. How you doing, Ash?
Not bad. I have 3 cats here as guest hosts to this parental leave special. Interesting, because none of them, as far as I'm aware, have been parents, although they have had to adopt each other as siblings. I don't know how much input the cats are going to have.
Oh,
but they're here.
Yeah, if they do, if they put a paw up, we'll bring the mic over to them. I'm really looking forward to our chat today, Ash. And as always, this one will be an absolute ripper. We have a really jam-packed schedule today, and being the podcast professionals, we are very organised. So let's kick it off, get this special episode panel pod happening, because today's discussion is all about a re-engagement from parental leave.
So we are thrilled to welcome to our parental leave special episode Jessica Mackelprang from the Department of Psychological Sciences and Liz Bremner from the Employee Experience team in People Planning and Culture. Thank you very much, Jessica and Liz, for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great to be invited. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys. So how about we go around the table and we do some introductions, and how about we start off with you, Liz? Who are you and what's your role here at Swinburne?
My name's Liz Bremner. I'm the Senior Manager of Employee Experience in the People Planning and Culture team. So in my role, I head up leading and professional development at Swinburne, as well as performance, the YPD process that we're all familiar with, our staff engagement process, such as the Your Voice survey, leading effective teams, so things like that. I'm also the manager of a team, and I've currently got a team member on parental leave. So I've got a recent experience from a manager's perspective about the parental leave journey. So really looking forward to talking through that today.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And yourself, Jessica?
I'm Jessica Mackelprang, and I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Psychological Sciences. And my role is an academic position. I split my time roughly equally between teaching and research.
Excellent. How good's that, Ash? We've got somebody from professional staff and academic staff to give their point of view on returning from parental leave. Before we kick into some really hard questions, how are your babies doing?
Well, mine aren't really babies anymore. So I've got a 9-year-old and an 11-year-old. So they're in primary school. They're doing really well, really enjoying school. And my parental leave does feel like quite a while ago now, but, you know, I can definitely remember what it felt like to go on parental leave and the nerves of having a new baby, but then also coming back to work and what that journey was like. Yeah.
And what about you, Jessica?
Okay, so my little one is just coming up on 2.5, And so the parental leave journey doesn't feel too long ago, especially with the COVID experience, which sent us all home as well. So my baby was born about a year before COVID, and I had been back to work from parental leave for just shy of a month when we all headed home again due to the pandemic. So in some ways, it feels a bit like parental leave started and never ended, and the two just sort of meshed together in some way. So it'll be nice to be able to talk a little bit and unpack some of those experiences and these transitions.
And so for you, Liz and Jessica, are you able to give us a little bit of an understanding on what type of parental leave you took and how that journey was for you both?
So I guess I'll jump in here. So I took the full 12 months of parental leave that were offered through Swinburne, and mine started a bit abruptly as my baby decided to rock up at 35 weeks and so kind of dove right into parental leave a bit earlier than I had anticipated I would. But yeah, I took the full parental leave, and then from that I returned right out the gates back full time.
Okay,
those 12 months.
So you're back at work now full time?
Yes.
Right, okay. And what about yourself, Liz?
So I had my parental leave experience before I commenced at Swinburne, and when my baby was born, it was back in the bad old days before paid parental leave was a thing. So it was quite different to the experience now, I think. And I think there's a lot better support for parental leave just in the 10 years since I had my first child. But I actually was on a fixed term contract when my first child was born. And so I actually finished up that contract just before I went on leave. So I was unemployed actually officially during my parental leave period. And I took a 4-year career break. So after my first child was born, my partner had the opportunity to relocate to Hong Kong for his work, and we decided to take that adventure. So we left when our son was 6 months old. And then we had our second baby 2 years later over in Hong Kong, and I decided not to be in paid employment during that period. Instead, I completed my master's degree. So I chose to actually take some time out to study and to raise young children. And so when I decided to go back into the workforce, it was off the back of a 4-year break, which was quite challenging. Yeah.
And I would say arguably with still 2 full-time roles if you are studying, which can be full-time, and parenting, which is definitely full-time.
Yeah, that's right. It was definitely a juggle.
And overseas, so having probably not as much of a network in Hong Kong, or having to establish that network.
Yeah, absolutely.
Friends.
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's something that resonates a bit, actually, just having started the whole journey in a different country. So I had relocated from the US and landed on Australia, the shores of Melbourne, if you will, 5 days before I started at Swinburne. And then 2 years later had my little one. So still quite a small circle.
And so and then COVID hit. So, the old, it takes a village. So I have a almost 4-year-old as well. And we definitely have quite a village of various family members all across the state. In fact, some would say too many. So in going to places where you don't have as much family to help, and then in a COVID context, probably more for yourself, Jessica, with COVID, but Liz still, how did you find that in terms of engaging, whether it was with your degree, Liz, or with the workplace and going straight back to full-time? How was that balance or not? Maybe Jessica, how was your balance?
So because I started at Swinburne so soon after arriving, a lot of my network socially also came from colleagues and other folks through the university who were important to me. So it was really important to me to stay connected to the university community, actually. And I think I've just totally lost the question here.
That's okay. It's how.
I'm so sorry.
Don't be sorry. It's how do you have that network? And you said that it's about like just starting work as soon as you arrived in Australia. So working at Swinburne and that engagement piece and engaging with colleagues to have your village both for yourself and sanity, as well as a work and a job, and maybe talking a bit about how you built those work networks and how they helped you balance your work and parenting. And Liz, maybe ways that we as managers or people around the university can facilitate that in a work context for everyone.
Yeah, so I think having arrived it started at Swinburne, so soon after arriving in Melbourne, meant that a lot of my sort of friends and social contacts came through the university. And so when I had my little one of the things that was really important for me was continuing to nurture those relationships while I was on leave. So I think that for folks who maybe have very much a village here and they sort of maybe have a more solid break from work and turn to those. In some ways, I turned in different ways to my colleagues, and being close to the university in terms of where I live, I pretty commonly hop down, grab a coffee with colleagues, introduce them to my baby, and stay connected in that way, which kept me feeling connected to work, even though I wasn't working. The other thing that was quite important was having childcare available through the university, and there on site was really important to me.
That's such an interesting answer, Jessica, because the purpose of our podcast is to keep connected and keep connecting with our staff, but must have been terribly hard for you coming all the way from the other side of the world, being here, trying to make new friends, new contacts, and then having a baby. I can't imagine all of those things kind of happening all at once. So keeping connected with your staff was, or your colleagues, sorry, really important for you. And
yeah, absolutely.
And how about you, Liz? How did it's yours is really complex as well, because you were overseas as well. So how did you keep connected and engage? Because it's very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly about building that community. So I really made the effort to reach out to other parents groups and to make sure that I was making friends with people in a similar situation. And in Hong Kong, because everyone lives in kind of high-rise apartments, you'd also meet other people in a similar situation and other expats with young children in those apartments. And so definitely formed a little bit of a community where we could help each other out there as well. So it's really important, I think, to be able to build those communities and to also just reach out when you need help and to be able to admit when you need a bit of help. It's definitely part of the culture in Hong Kong to be able to find, there's nannies that are readily, it's a very common thing to have a nanny. So we also got a part-time nanny to come in and help out occasionally, which would allow me to study as well. So just knowing when to reach out was really important, I think, and when to ask for help and to build that community of friends that could help you when you don't have that family network that you might have in your home country.
Definitely. So being so important about trying to keep connected, but re-engaging back with your work colleagues. And Liz, you said you've got somebody who's currently going on mat leave, is that right?
Yeah, so I've got someone that's currently on mat leave and is going to come back in about 4 weeks' time, I think. So as a manager, I think it's really important to actually take on the co-responsibility between manager and employee. To sit down before the parental leave starts and actually make a bit of a plan for keeping in touch as well. And we found that particularly important over COVID because so much has changed over the last 12 months at Swinburne. And now, somebody that's gone on parental leave actually just before we went to lockdown back in March last year and is now coming back has never experienced the kind of hybrid working environment that we're now working in and working from home mostly. With coming into the office and, balancing the changing restriction levels and, how we manage that as a team. So it's been really, really important to create a keeping in touch plan before the staff member went on parental leave. And during that time, we talked about not only how long that person wants to take off for leave, but also how they want to keep in touch. So obviously, you know, when you've got a brand new newborn, you probably, the last thing you want is your manager calling you every fortnight and providing updates. So we definitely said, okay, for the first 3 months, you know, we talked about how we'd like the announcement to be made and all the rest. But after that, we said, okay, we'll just have a bit of a break in communication so that the staff member can settle down into life as a new parent. But then after that, we agreed that we'd like to stay in touch about once a month, and we'd do that via phone calls. So after about 3 months, we got in touch, and we're also in touch via text message just when we need to. And agreed that we'd set up a monthly schedule of phone calls. So that's booked in our calendars. And of course, we're flexible around, you know, babies' needs and different appointments and things. But we definitely have kept to that monthly schedule. And we found that really, really fantastic in terms of just keeping that staff member abreast of all the changes that are going on at work, so that when they are ready to return, they're not surprised by anything that's going on. They understand the changes that have happened, the new work environment, how the team's operating now. And now that that person's starting to look at their transition back to work, we're looking at the more practical things like making sure they've got their IT equipment, that they're set up with a home office and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's been really, really important to stay in touch.
So Jessica, that was, I mean, Liz, that was such a comprehensive answer. Thank you. And you've kind of ticked off like a whole bunch of questions that I had ready to throw at you. But Jessica, is that how it kind of flowed for you? And can you tell us about when you were on mat leave and then trying to get your head around, well, you've got the baby, it's like a couple of months old now, what do I do? You know, do I want to start connecting? Can you tell us about your journey?
Yes. So I think a couple of things that were different with mine. I think where my baby kind of turned up a bit early and I ended up heading up on leave quite a bit earlier, but there wasn't sort of a formal plan on how often are we going to talk or things like that. But one of the things that I really appreciate about my department is that there's sort of a legacy of really strong academic mothers in the department who have gone on leave and returned. And I had a lot of informal conversations with colleagues about how they had managed things in their leave and what worked for them, what they found challenging. And one of the things that became clear to me is that everyone seemed to need really kind of different things during that period. And I think that normalized it a bit for me from the get-go, that my department was going to be able to support me in whatever way fit for me. And so they were quite happy if I, you know, showed up to grab a coffee and they could, you know, say hello to the baby. And that was a really nice way that made me feel like I was, I guess, really a part of the department and the university as a whole person and as a whole professional. It wasn't just that I was sort of this academic, but I was a person who was cared about in the department, and my colleagues were really quite happy to celebrate the wholeness of these changes in my life. So that made a big difference for me. And then I didn't take advantage of any of the formal keeping in touch days until a bit later in the process. And because my partner and I don't have any other family here, we didn't really have, say, like, just, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of built-in childcare and family networks.
Yeah, grandmas, aunties, uncles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I was really fortunate to be able to apply and be awarded some of the academic care funds through SWAN, the Swinburne Women's Academic Network. And so I used some of those funds to help cover a bit of creche costs so that I could then come in and have some research meetings in the lead up time to coming back to work. And I think that was another way that it just sort of made it a bit more, you know, some practical support, but also the sense of emotional support that the university had structures in place that really prioritized the support of a parent who was trying to make that transition back. And so I sort of had a few meetings kind of piddling in as I got ready to ramp up, and that was really great. It helped, I guess, kind of break the ice a bit on being away from my baby for a few hours at a time, because I just wasn't. I was, you know, really with him full time that year.
Jessica, I've got a question without notice. So from somebody that's come from overseas to Australia and then into a university environment, were you, compared to what's on offer in the US, surprised or blown away by what is the leave for parents?
Shocked delighted, blown away. I mean, I have a number of friends who are in academic positions in the US and don't get any paid leave at all. So they have to rely on sort of the structures related to temporary disability through the government, but there's not actually any required paid parental leave in the US. And so the experience is very, very different. So to have had paid leave, let alone the option of leave that I had, and even the potential to have extended longer on a part-time basis from work had I chosen to, was just unfathomable for me. I remember reading some of the support documentation and almost not believing it, like having to read things several times and saying to my partner, like, seriously, like, are these going to be the options available to us? Because it made the possibility of being a professional and being a parent seem so much more doable. And in the industry that he works, it's similar. There's much better support for fathers as well.
Unreal. Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's great. It's just like makes you feel like, I know I can keep doing my job. I've got a great job to come back to. Plus I can take this time to be with my baby for 12 months if you so want to take that time.
Absolutely. Like inevitably there's going to be lags in certain things or time delays in certain things, but it's not in the same way. And I didn't carry sort of fear around the well-being of my career and the potential for my career the way that I think I would have had I been in the US.
So thinking about re-engagement, getting yourself mentally prepared to come back to work after 12 months or however long it is. Just for transparency, I don't have children, so I've never taken this type of leave, but how do you prepare yourself mentally to come back from taking time off? Are you ready? Or let's discuss, because that's a big question. Liz?
Yeah, well, I think as I took 4 years out, it was a really, really big leap to come back to work. And I actually had to look for a new job as well. So I wasn't really returning to the same role after a period of parental leave. I was looking for a new role. And I think in those 4 years, I really did lose a lot of my sense of what I could bring professionally, because I'd been so immersed in that world of parenting young children and, you know, I'd been studying, but I really had, I guess, lost touch with some of my professional network, and I had lost touch a little bit with those strengths and, you know, where I was at professionally as well. And so actually looking for a job was quite daunting. But I did spend some time very deliberately, you know, going through my resume, reminding myself what I had achieved, you know, what my professional strengths were, and also that I had studied, so I could show that during that time of leave, I wasn't just parenting, but I was also continuing to build on my career. And I was very lucky to get a role that was not only flexible, but had on-site childcare as well. And I think Jessica touched on that. It's such an amazing benefit that we have at Swinburne. And, you know, I worked in a large hospital for a while and they had on-site childcare there as well. And the role was also quite close to my home. So those things really made a massive difference in coming back and helped me feel a little more confident in the transition back as well. But, you know, other things, I think you've got to look for childcare. That can be really, really hard. And I think it's really important to realise that you've got to start doing that very early. So you can't expect to just call up a childcare centre a month out from commencing work. A lot of people actually start that as soon as their baby's born, which for first-time parents is a bit of a shock just to understand how competitive and challenging the childcare system can be. So getting organised as early as possible is a really good idea. And yeah, just finding the right one for you can be a bit of a challenge as well. You've probably got to look at a few different childcare options before you decide on the right options for you. So yeah, they were probably my main findings when I came back.
Yeah, what about you, Jessica? How did you prepare yourself mentally? Were you like ready to go? Were you like, come on, see you later, baby, I'm out of here?
I was definitely chomping at the bit. There were data that were sitting around waiting for me to analyze them, and papers that needed to be written. And if anything, that was sort of intimidating. You know, the work had piled up, the data were aging. I wanted to get back to work and doing some of those things.
Oh, so there was that pressure, academic pressure for you to kind of like keep moving.
Yeah, definitely, to make sure that I got back into things and hit the ground running. And I did feel energized in that way to do that. And to build on what Liz was saying, I think having the childcare right there, and it was, you know, many of my colleagues have used Swinburne childcare over the years. And so it was the only childcare that I applied to. They said, we loved it. It was great. This is what we liked about it. And I went, okay, right. This is so overwhelming to think about anything else. I'll go with that one. And fortunately, Swinburne staff and students do get priority at Swinburne childcare. So it can help with some of those time delays as well, if it's a center that fits for you in terms of proximity, et cetera. And so that was really great. And one of the things that was valuable about that as well, and that smoothed the transition for me, is that I was still breastfeeding. And the last thing I wanted was to be schlepping a pump of bottles and going to the sink and finding a place to pump and just dealing with all of that, just mayhem repeatedly. But having the proximal childcare meant that I could choose to take a break, go in the middle of the day, feed my kid, see him, and then head back to work. And having that break was actually, it almost was like a bit of it went from being sort of a full-time mom with sort of touch points to work to being a full-time academic, but still being able to have those nice touch points throughout the day with my child as I needed. And I felt very supported about that through the university to make that work. And it was really important to me.
In your opinion, Liz and Jessica, can you see like any roadblocks or pain points for staff trying to re-engage, like from either a manager's side or returning parent coming back from parental leave? Or, I mean, it sounds like there's so much available. There's heaps of options available. But just in your opinion or your experience, have you had any types of roadblocks or pain points?
For me, I think it's just the childcare issue can be. I mean, we're very lucky at Swinburne to have the option of on-site childcare, but it's not the same for everybody. And I know that can be a roadblock, in particular, just finding those days that you want to be in the office and finding childcare for those particular days can be a bit of a juggle. But I think the other thing is just all the change that's happened since COVID as well, that you have to make sure that your staff members, or when you're coming back, are very prepared and up to date with the latest working arrangements, that you've got your home office set up and that kind of thing. So it's not really a roadblock, but I would say you do have to be very, very prepared with that, and make sure that you're set up for that new way of working.
Great tip. Yeah. What about you, Jessica?
I think Liz, you mentioned sort of before we got started that there's some different resources and whatnot for parents to sort of get oriented to the lay of the land around parental leave at Swinburne. But I think that's one of the things that can be a bit of a hurdle, just trying to understand what are the processes and the steps and the options. And some of that knowledge can come through sort of word of mouth, but reaching out and really inquiring about what supports are available, what options are available, I think is really necessary, because otherwise it can, I think, feel extra daunting. And from the academic side of things, how does being willing to ask the questions around how does having taken this time affect productivity expectations and whatnot, I think those are really important questions to ask and can be anxiety provoking.
And I think I would add to that, for that side of it, I don't know if the packs are updated, but for an academic, the different places that parental leave and then the impact on research expectations, the process around your researcher development plan, I don't know if they're embedded in the parental leave material. I talk about that stuff, the nature of some of the tasks I'm involved in, but in terms of my staff, I don't read for that stuff because I obviously don't manage any academic staff. But I think having that combined, and maybe Liz might talk to what our obligations and requirements are if someone does want to return flexibly and work part-time, how the organisation, what requirements we have of working to that, because I know sometimes academic or professional, there can be quite a lot of pressure coming back part-time, how much you then have to juggle and how much adjustments can be made and whatnot in different circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. So under the Fair Work Act, anybody that's coming back from a period of parental leave that has young child or children have the right to request flexible working. And obviously at Swinburne, I mean, that's the minimum mandated, amount of flexibility that you can request, but we hope at Swinburne that we can offer more flexibility than just the minimum standard. But yeah, everybody has that right to request a flexible working arrangement, and information on that can be found on our intranet. Or if you do need any information around parental leave or flexible working arrangements, you can also contact our People and Culture Assist team at any time, and they have experts that are able to talk you through that and provide you with further guides and resources as well. So first step would be talk to your manager, but then there's also the People and Culture Assist or your People and Culture business partner that can talk you through that.
Fantastic, great answer there. And as we kind of get to the end of our podcast, I wanted to ask you guys what worked well for you, and if you've got any hot tips for people that are ready to go off on parental leave or ready to return from parental leave that'll be listening to the podcast, because a lot of people listen to this podcast.
Well, particularly for first timers, whether it's managing or going on parental leave, primary or secondary. Top tips for people who've never done it before.
Yeah. For me, it'd be definitely being aware of the keeping in touch days. And I think Jessica did mention them earlier, but not everybody is aware that also under Fair Work, there's 10 days of keeping in touch days, which you can use. And they're actually paid days where you can come back, and it's to engage in work activities. So it could be, you know, a planning day with your team, attending a conference or a training day, something like that. And it's a really good way of just staying in touch professionally and being able to still learn and develop while you're on parental leave, if that's something you want to do, but it's not compulsory. I'd also say, you know, my other top tips, just to be kind to yourself, because when you first come back from parental leave, often as soon as the kids hit childcare, they're going to be sick for probably 6 to 12 months.
So right.
Every bug going around. And so, you know, you've just got to expect that. And as a manager, really important to just be aware of that and to keep in touch with how your new returnee's going as well, and just have those ongoing conversations about how the transition's going, and, you know, if they need some time out for care or leave, that supportive around that.
And yourself, Jessica?
Yeah, I think for me, I think this kind of builds a little bit on what you're saying there, Liz, but I think if you're getting ready to go, really honoring that you don't know what that journey is going to look like for you and how you're going to feel. And if you want to be kind of more connected, reaching out and saying hello to colleagues and grabbing a coffee like I did, great. And if you want to be totally away, great. But to really honor that precious time, because it goes so shockingly quickly. Even, you know, the days are long, but the years are short, they say. And so just really honoring that process for yourself. The other thing that I would say, whether you're again going or coming, is to reach out to other parents. And I shouldn't say, I keep speaking about sort of the mom's vantage point, but dads too. And I think most parents are pretty happy to acknowledge the challenge and the struggles and to find solidarity in that. So find your coven of people you can share the woes of parenting and academia, whatever your professional role may be, to have sort of some of that support.
Yeah, it's so important. Sorry, a cat just did walk in front of the screen.
My cats. I have 3 cats. They like to make guest appearances. So my son is in daycare, but the cats, there is no such thing.
Good work there, Ash. Absolutely love that. Well, I really feel like this has been such a useful conversation, Liz and Jessica. Thank you so much for being a part of this discussion and giving your insights onto how your journey was and how you've managed your return back into work. Jessica, it's been a really interesting story hearing you come from the US and how you've had to settle here. And yours was so similar, Liz, but in another country. So we really appreciate you being part of the podcast professionals. That's it for today's special discussion. Thank you very much, ladies. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, take it easy. Hope to see you on campus soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ash.
Thank you.
Wow, Ash, that was really interesting. And high five to us. This parental special leave edition was an absolute ripper. I'm going to ask you to give it a score out of 10, because that's what we do here on the Podcast Professionals podcast. I know you're going to give it, what, 10, 11 out of 10?
11 out of 10.
Yeah,
I'm always a big fan of backing yourself. But having said that, sometimes after listening to the recordings, my rating changes a little. I find it harder to back myself after hearing my own voice, but I'm getting used to it as we keep going with the podcast professionals.
Certainly, I am too. And it was really good of our guests to join us today and hear from there what their perspective is on parental leave. So thanks to Jessica and Liz for being a part of it. And thank you so much to everybody else for all the bucket loads of engagement and support we're getting for our podcast. It's really awesome and really heartwarming. So thank you very much. If you want to comment on the pod, jump onto Yammer, give us a thumbs up. Let's start the trend of the podcast professionals on Yammer. Don't worry, I'll kick it off and Ash joins in. Thank you very much to everyone. And so look out for our next podcast. What is it, Ash?
We have got faculty facilities manager, Rita Barbagallo. So Rita has been with Swinburne since before the 2014 restructure. So I think she's been here. She will tell us anyway on that episode.
Yep.
And really excited to talk to Rita across a really quite a varied career. So I work with Rita day to day and always enjoy a good chat with Rita.
Yeah,
so,
she's the best. All right, Ash.
Oh, sorry. Yep.
No, I was just going to say, all right, Ash. Great podcast yet again.
Yes, more topic requests, hashtag podcast professionals and hashtag re-engaging.
Good on you, Ash. See you soon. Bye-bye.